Hi everybody, welcome to Naughty by Imagination. I'm your host Napoleon and we're going to be reading some fab fiction. Today's selection comes to us by Chili Tide. Looks like Chili Tide. I'm going to say Chili Tide. And it's entitled One Night. The description reads, as their bodies collide, their souls intertwined. One night leads to the biggest terror they ever face. This is a Roy Riza Hawkeye pairing. And I'm really kind of interested. I guess we'll see. It had all started so suddenly. A very raucous knocking came across the door of Riza Hawkeye in the middle of her day off. She set down the book she was reading on the table and stood up cautiously. She leaned down to remove her gun from her leg holster, cocking it. Her eyes never left the door. Gun drawn, she slowly walked to the door. She dared herself to look through the peephole, sighing in exasperation and letting her arms fall to her side. She set the gun down on a small side table and threw the door open. "God damn it, Colonel!" she nearly shouted. Said Colonel swayed as he stood. "Hey, no need to be so loud," Roy Mustang slurred. His breath smelled heavily of alcohol, and Riza mentally slapped herself. He hiccuped and nearly fell forward. She caught him, slinging his arm over her shoulder and wrapping her arm around his waist. She half dragged him into her apartment, shutting the door with her foot. Hayate watched from the couch, knowing it would be unwise to entangle himself in their legs. Riza brought him to her bed and let him fall upon it, presumably passed out. She went back to the kitchen to get him a glass of water. She set it on her bedside table. The sound of him snoring confirmed her suspicions. She closed the door to her bedroom and resumed her spot on the table. "So you just come over to people's houses and just crash in their bed? I mean, this is fucking second in command, but still kind of rude, unannounced." "Only Roy Mustang would get himself beyond drunk at 2 in the afternoon," she muttered to no one. She was not worried about him, only slightly disappointed in his choices. Sometimes she was angry that she had fallen in love with a man like Roy Mustang, a man who couldn't afford to waste his time on matters of the heart, a man whom she could never truly be with. But this was the way the world worked. It wasn't fair, but for the moment, Rizza was content. She picked up her book and continued where she'd left off. Rizza lay on the couch. Though it was only 9, she found herself beginning to nod off. The Colonel had not yet emerged from her room, but she had assumed he wouldn't. Well, of course not. It's 9 o'clock. He was pissy drunk at 2 p.m. His ass is out for the day. Though her assumption that he would remain bedridden until the morning was proven wrong, as the door to her bedroom finally opened. Oh shit, I spoke too soon. Roy stood in the doorway, a hand on his forehead. Rizza glanced up, her mouth open to say something, but Roy's voice cut in first. "I would like to apologize, Lieutenant," he said hoarsely. Rizza stood up. I know this isn't what you wanted to do. You wanted to be doing on your day off." He leaned against the doorframe, the hangover clear on his face. "He was no trouble, Colonel," she said. She had almost asked him why he had been drinking in the middle of the afternoon, but decided against it. It was none of her business, anyway. "Are you hungry?" she asked him. It was then he noticed a large pot simmering quietly on the stove. In response, he walked over to the table and sat down. Rizza rolled her eyes, but went to fetch him a bowl of soup. She gave him mostly broth, as that was the only thing that was going to help clear his head, but he didn't seem to complain. She watched him sip the hot liquid from across the table. Neither one spoke, not that they needed to. And for this Rizza was appreciative. She enjoyed having someone to sit in comfortable silence with. When he finished, he stood up and washed the bowl. Rizza stood as well. "Thank you for your hospitality, Lieutenant, and I'm sorry for any inconvenience I've caused you," Roy said as he turned around. She only nodded in response and followed as he walked to the door. He had been mulling something over during his meal, and was not sure how to react. Rizza quirked an eyebrow at his hesitance. "Colonel?" she asked. Roy turned around, his eyes flitting over her face. She scrutinized his expression, trying not to ascertain his thoughts. There was something in his eyes, an emotion she could not determine, for she had never seen it there before. Before any thoughts could form, Roy has come within a few inches from her face. Her heart began racing. "Colonel, what?" she began, but her voice left her as he placed his hand against her cheek. He tilted his head and put his lips deliberately on her jaw. Riza shivered. There was no denying the pleasurable tingling racing up her spine. Riza Hawkeye had loved Roy Mustang for years, and knowing now that he felt the same way could have made her cry tears of joy. But it was forbidden. A love between them could never be in the current state of the country. Riza opened her mouth to protest, much to her disheartenment, but was met with a protest of her own. "Forget about everything," Roy said. "Forget about this shitty government and the people who'd rather see us in graves. Please, for just one night, let's pretend there's only us." He stared into her eyes. Riza had never seen Mustang beg, but this was as close to begging as he'd ever get. Still, she could not risk their lives for a night of pleasure. "Riza," he whispered. Her heart fluttered at the sound of her name gracing his lips. She could resist no longer. Oh, that's so cute! Oh my god! Sorry, y'all. Sorry, y'all. Oh my god, let me stop before my fucking microphone blew up. Without warning, Riza crushed her lips against his. Her hands flew to his hair, while his roamed the curves of her waist, hips, and back. Their mouths moved together in perfect precision, while their tongues battled for dominance. Oh, that's sexy as shit. Fuck. The two stumbled backward, never releasing each other from the lover's grip. Riza thought they would never make it to the bedroom, but at last, with some difficulty, she found herself on her bed staring up at the corner. Roy gazed down at her for a brief moment before putting his lips back on hers. Riza craved for more. She pulled at the buttons of his jacket, causing some of them to pop off. The same fate became of the shirt underneath, and he shrugged out of the clothing. She sat up and raked her hands across his bare chest. She released her lips from his and began trailing kisses down his neck and chest. Roy moaned, and it made her shiver. He cupped her chin and brought her back up to face him. He undid the buttons on her shirt, letting it slide off of her shoulders. Riza unclasped her bra and threw it across the room. Roy pushed her back down, his head going for her chest. Riza cried out with pleasure, and it only made Roy want her more. They abandoned the rest of their clothing and allowed their bodies to become one. Oh shit. It's hot. It's getting more hot in this closet, y'all. Don't ask me why I'm in the closet, y'all. I'm sorry, never mind. They crashed together with such a desperate and forceful lust that it seemed to shake the earth. Both were releasing years of pent-up want, allowing their bodies to intertwine much as their souls had been in the years leading up. They climaxed at the same time, both crying out the other's name. Roy collapsed next to Riza, resting his head on her chest. Their breathing was erratic, but their hearts beat in sync. Roy kissed her shoulder instinctively. When their breathing slowed, he sat up and threw his legs over the side of the bed. With his back to her, he spoke. "I wish things could be different." His voice held a tone of regret. "I'm sorry." With that, he stood and gathered his clothing, throwing them on in a hurry. Oh my god! Like, y'all don't cuddle. I mean, I get it. Especially during what was going on. If we're talking about, even if this was, no, I guess this wasn't really after Brotherhood or the original. I'm guessing this is like in the middle. Like, this is just a day right before shit got really wild. He's still trying to be pure. She's still at his side. It's before this is right before shit like hit the fan and got really bad, or maybe like right after it got bad and they had like one lustful moment. So I get it. You don't want to stay in the moment for too long, because then you're gonna forget who you are, where you are, what's going on around you. You don't want to lose yourself. But come on, y'all, you telling me you don't want to cuddle after a good fucking, or a good lustful fucking? Like, y'all just bust that, oh god, and it's just like, alright, bye. Like, you don't ever want to just lay there and just be in your own juices for, no? Is it just me? I think it's just me. Fuck it, I guess. Only when she heard the door shut did she bear herself to move. She sat up slowly, pulling the sheet with her. What they had done was forbidden. and should they be caught, the consequences must be severe. Rizzo would regret it more later, but for now she couldn't allow herself to be denied of the satisfaction looming over her. She lied back down, wrapping herself in the sheets, and fell asleep. Life had gone on. Neither the colonel nor his lieutenant had acknowledged what happened that night between them a month ago. Oh shit, it's been a month. And no one else seemed to catch on to anything had happened either. Business went on as usual, and Roy and Riza acted as if nothing had ever happened. But now Riza Hawkeye was scared. Never in all her years as a woman had she ever been late. Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh no! Oh no! The first day, she was only slightly worried. The second day, a bit more so. But it was the sixth day, and still it had not come. Riza paced about her apartment, stopping to stare at her calendar ever so often. 6 days of nothing. Riza could deal with people shooting at her, being chased down by homunculi, but motherhood was something she was not prepared for. The thought truly terrified her. She began to panic. Hayate watched her from under the table, surely not realizing how bad the situation was. Y'all don't know how fucking scary that is. Well, females, y'all know. Well, that's if you've ever had a pregnancy scare before, or if you've ever been pregnant. But that shit is fucking scary, especially when you're not even thinking about it. Like, you're just like, oh, that was nice. And, like, especially if you're one to keep track of your period. Me, I'm on birth control, so my cycle. Sorry, guys, who want to hear all this icky ass shit, but we gonna fucking talk about it. I don't keep track of mine really anymore because I'm on birth control. So 1 month I might have it, the next month I might not. It's iffy, it's weird. But for someone who's consistently keeping track of their cycle, it's supposed to come on the 22nd of every month. It's supposed to come on the 1st of every month. You keep track, and then you're 6 days late, not knowing why. The weather hasn't changed, if that's what affects it. Your diet isn't different, if that's what affects it. That shit is fucking scary. Like, you don't even really realize it. It kind of just happens, and there's nothing you can do except either A, take a pregnancy test, or B, sit there and pray that Mother Nature sends Moses to you to part the Red Sea just one more month, and then next month you like sit there and you're like, I'll never do it again. I'll never do it again. I'll never do it again. Of course, unless you're trying to have a kid. And then otherwise, congratulations. But for someone who's like not trying to have a kid, like that shit is fucking scary. But my bad. Back to the fat fiction. Well, this ain't really fat fiction. This is like sat fiction, but I like this shit. Okay, it's different. She'd been able to hide her concern in the previous days, but there was no way she could cover up the sheer terror she was feeling. At last, she stopped pacing and sunk to the floor. She let the tears fall from her eyes as she clutched her abdomen. Hayate walked over cautiously. Sensing her distress, he curled up next to her. There was nothing either of them could do. Roy Mustang Wait, hold up. Do they have Well, not pregnancy tests, but did they have like Plan B back? I'm stupid. No, they didn't. Dumb. So dumb. Roy Mustang strode into his office as he would on any other day. His subordinates greeted him as usual, and he sat down at his desk. He glanced up in preparation for a pile of paperwork, but was met with an empty desk. His brows came together. "Where is Lieutenant Hawkeye?" he asked to no one in particular. The other men looked up at each other, clearly perplexed. "She hasn't come in yet, sir," Fury offered. Roy nodded, and the men went back to work. He excused himself and left the office. He wasn't like the lieutenant to be late for work, or not to call if she wasn't coming in. Roy found a phone and dialed her number. When there was no answer, he grew concerned. He stepped back into his office to tell his subordinates that he had official business to attend to, and would be gone for a while. The men saluted him, and Roy nearly ran out of the building. He sped down the street to her apartment, letting his fear get the best of him. He parked ploppily in front of her building and sprinted up the stairs. "Lieutenant!" he shouted, pounding on the door. "Lieutenant Hawkeye!" She didn't come to the door. He grew even more worried. See, he about to go get his. He about to go get his fucking girl. I'm not gonna say his bitch because it's not like his. I mean, no, he about to get his bitch. He about to get his girl. I mean, same thing. Whatever. He took a step back and kicked the door open. Damn! Okay. You know what? Never mind. It burst open and his heart nearly stopped at the sight of Rizzo Hawkeye lying motionless on the floor. Hayate was standing protectively over her until he realized that it was Roy making all the commotion. He stepped aside as the man kneeled at her side. Rizzo! He pulled her into his arms and brushed the hair from her face. He noted her tear-stained cheeks. She opened her eyes. More tears began to fall from her eyes as she buried her face in his chest. Roy scooped her up in his arms and carried her to her bed. He sat her down gently and sat on the edge of the bed. She drew her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around him. Her mind seemed to be off somewhere, but Roy was patient. She sucked in a shaky breath and turned his attention to Kurt. I'm late, she said, her voice quiet and hoarse. Roy's brows came together, confusion written on his face. Please don't try to make me say it, Roy, she said shakingly. He swallowed hard, thinking he understood what she meant. You mean you're... His voice trailed off. His eyes grew wide. He, too, was unable to say it. She nodded solemnly. I think so. Roy's face went pale. His blood froze cold. Time seemed to stop. He had to tell himself to breathe. And it's mine? He asked quietly. He tried to keep his voice steady and calm, but Rizzo could tell he wasn't quite managing. Yes, Roy, it's yours. By now the tears had stopped, but the fear was still there. The two sat in silence for several minutes. Roy's mind was going a mile a minute. Thoughts of crime, diapers, bicycles, and schooling crossed his mind. Rizzo couldn't help but think of prison. Prison? Oh, because they fucked. Would they get arrested for that? People in the comments. Would they get arrested for that? Maybe I don't fucking know about this shit. But I have a tech colonel? Now that she was in control of her emotions, Rizzo felt it best return to formalities. Roy stifled his desperate laugh at her words. It was a baby, not a criminal. He put his elbow on his knee and rested his chin in his hand. He took a deep breath and held it. He tried to think of something to say, but prospects of the future would not leave his thoughts. He let out the breath. I don't know, he said. Rizzo sighed and looked to the window. You should get back to work, she said absent-mindedly. He turned to look at her. She looked absolutely defeated, and it pained him. Never had he seen his lieutenant falter, but she was afraid. He reached out to grasp one of her hands. She turned her head back at his touch. He squeezed gently. Everything's going to be all right, Rizzo, he said. The look in his eyes should have been convincing, but Rizzo couldn't help but still feel vulnerable. Still, she smiled a sad smile for him, leaned in and kissed her forehead. I'm giving you the day off tomorrow. I'll come and check on you sometime. He said as he stood. He walked over to the door and paused in the doorway. He turned his head to look at her once more, smiling. Then he promptly left the apartment. Hayate entered the room and tilted his head to his master. Come here, boy, she murmured, lying back in her bed. The dog jumped in the bed and curled up next to her chest. And curled up next to her. Rizzo allowed her exhaustion to take over as she fell asleep. Roy couldn't find sleep that night. He had to admit that he was actually excited for the whole ordeal. He loved Rizzo deeply. He wanted nothing more than to share his life with her. But under their current circumstances, a relationship would be out of the question. The night they had shared should never have happened, and up until this point, Roy had regretted it. But this was a miracle. Roy and Rizzo had created a life when their love was doomed to flourish. He was going to be a father, and nothing gave him greater pleasure. That's nice. I mean, I guess some people, I don't know. If I found out I was pregnant right now, I think I'd fucking cry. Like, I think I'd be in that situation. I think I would cry. I think I'd get myself together. I think I would think about the dad of my child, and I think I would hope and pray that that person had our best interest at heart, because men suck. I mean, girls suck too. People suck. We just suck. And this situation is make or break time. Honestly, it can make or break a relationship, a friendship, a situationship, all that shit. It can break it. It can torch the entire ideal of moving forward, trying again, being a thing. but at the same time, it can reinforce it. It can build something new. A lot of stuff can happen. And when the mother is panicking, you know, it is good that the dad or the potential dad, the dad elect, isn't that what they call the president before he's been inaugurated? So the father elect before he's been inaugurated, he is calm, that he is persistent, that he tries to keep her calm and clear no matter what happens, whether, they decide to keep it, abortion, adoption, whatever they decide to do, that he is calm, he supports her. And you know what? I'm glad they wrote Roy like this. I mean, I wouldn't doubt that Roy would be this type of character put in this type of situation, but I'm still glad that they did write Roy like this. He's not a whole dickhead and doesn't take it well. I mean, doesn't take the idea well. The next morning, he came into his office with a smile on his face. He uncharacteristically greeted everyone he saw. As he entered his office, however, his smile fell and a worried look replaced it. Sitting at her desk, looking at some paperwork, was Riza Hawkeye. She didn't look up as he stormed into the room and headed straight for her desk. "May I speak to you in private, Lieutenant?" he asked. She looked up at him, then her face resigned. She stood and followed him into the hallway. They kept their voices low. "I thought I gave you the day off today," he said. Riza noted the worried tone in his voice and sighed. Her eyes darted to the floor. "He came this morning," she whispered. Roy's lips parted, a small puff of air escaping. "So you're not pregnant?" he asked, trying to hide his disappointment. Riza swallowed and shook her head. "No, sir." Roy's shoulders slumped and his heart sank. He released the breath he didn't realize he was holding. "Oh," was all he could say. Rizzo raised her eyes back at him, gave a salute, and went back in the office. Roy leaned against the wall. It felt like all of his thoughts were pouring out of his skull like 1,000 tiny waterfalls. He had liked the idea of becoming a father. He had liked the idea of seeing Rizzo with a child in her arms. He had liked the idea they would be together and raise a family. But this wasn't the time. This wasn't the right time. He needed to become the Fuhrer and straighten up the country. Things needed to be fixed before they could even consider prospects of their personal future. Would it ever be the right time? Roy couldn't say. He steered himself and went back into his office. He wasn't content, but he'd never let Rizzo know. Oh, that's nice. That was nice, y'all. That was really nice. I'm really happy for it. That was so nice. Like, that was nice. That's not too many. It's not too many, like, love stories I find on here. Maybe because I skipped them and get right into the fucking. But it's nice that somebody wrote him like that, especially in real life situations. Like, this can totally be relatable to somebody. And, it's really gushy gooey, especially when you wanted, if this is your ship factor, this is the ship that you jump on. Haha, see what I did there? Anyway, um, as characters, but to be realistic. Yeah, it wouldn't be a good situation, whether or not they're going to jail, I don't know. But it wouldn't be a good situation at all because fucking Bradley and the homunculus and all that dumbass shit. And then they had the older guy who became pure after Bradley. So I'm pretty sure they still had shit to fix, after everything went down. So they weren't in the best position to raise a family. But the idea that he was positive, and then with her saying, no, I'm not pregnant, my period came. The idea that, what, he was the disappointed one. Or, she was scared. But the idea that he was the disappointed one, but he would still keep it to himself, I can respect that. But alright, guys, that's all the time I have for today. I hope you guys liked it. I like today's. Today's was real good. I like today's. I like it. I like it. But anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. That was Naughty by Imagination with your host, Napoleon. I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.